here in our department and also previous chair of the Department of Leadership as well. So at this point, we are going to ask Dr. Gary Burdick, who is the Dean of Research, to bring greetings on behalf of the university administration and tell us briefly what Energize is doing in terms of research. And after that, he is going to offer the opening prayer for us. And after Dr. Burdick, we are going to have the two coordinators for the day, Dr. Jay Brand and Dr. Randy Siebold, and they will introduce our special guest for today. So at this time, Dr. Burdick, it is your turn to share greetings on behalf of the administration.
Good evening and welcome to Energize University. I'm really excited about this series that is Research for Decision Makers. I'm Gary Burdick, the Dean of Research here at Energize University. And in the research office here, we do everything we can to support research across the campus at all levels. We support the undergraduate research, graduate level research, and faculty doing research. And in particular, what I'm most excited about is the research that our faculty are doing that is looking at real life and providing the data for decision making. So in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we actually have a global church survey that our faculty members are leading out in to see what the needs are in the world church and allow our leaders then to use that data to effectively make data-driven decisions. And so I'm very proud of what the leadership program here is doing alongside that with talking about research for decision makers. So if you are all interested in knowing what we're doing, our website is andrews.edu/research. You're welcome to peruse the site and contact me at research@andrews.edu if you have any questions. So with that, let's get started with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the blessings that you have provided on us, and we ask for your wisdom and benefit us all from this series. And now bless the speaker and bless all everybody who is listening. We ask in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen. Yeah, appreciate that. Well, my name is Randy Siebold, and I'm here this evening to lead out with Dr. Jay Brand, my colleague and buddy and fellow arguer. We are very excited to be here with Karen Tilstra. Just to set the context of this whole thing, this started as an idea to try to really think about how research component would fit into our new doctoral program, the Doctor of Leadership. Well, when we started thinking about this, we said, listen, this just has to be really practical. You know, research sometimes gets kind of heady and, you know, they do research for research's sake, but boy, it's got to come down. It's got to be really practical. So Jay and I got into a conversation. We decided to teach a class in it. And then other colleagues joined in, and we have this webinar series that I am just elated about. This is going to be so fun. And we're launching it with one of our favorite people, Karen Tilstra, and who is not only a graduate of the program, but a friend, someone who's mentored us. And it's just this is what a great way to get started. So maybe what we could do then is I'll just give kind of a little background for Dr. Tilstra, Karen, and then Jay, I'll turn it over to you. Maybe you can flesh it out. I'll just do it quick. We don't want to take too long. Okay, so Karen Tilstra, you're still in Florida, right? Down in the Orlando area.
Yeah, right now I'm in California in my daughter-in-law's craft room. So that's what's behind me.
That's a good place to hang out.
You can do a lot of research in this room.
There would be a lot of good stuff happening there. All right, so yes, Karen Tilstra, And the first time, well, not first time we met was back, but for innovation, going down to the Florida Hospital Innovation Lab. And she was a co-founder of that group, really the energy person behind really bringing that together. She's also helped the Orlando Magic build up their lab. We've been there for a tour, and now started out her own company. We'll learn more about that, perhaps creativity effect. And so, Karen, we're really excited. But before we hand it to you, Dr. Jay Brand, my buddy and friend, give us a little bit more context here.
Yes. Well, I'm that person that everyone is always hoping will shut up so the speaker can keep going. But I have to say that all of my contact with Karen has been so positive, just amazingly so. In fact, she's one of those few people, and you hear this said once in a while about people. It's definitely true about her. The first few sentences into your conversation, you feel like you're a lifelong friend of hers. And the second thing is, you believe that it's possible to do anything after you've spent any time with her at all. I mean, you can be creative, you can be innovative, you can change the world. I mean, she lives it. And we're just looking forward to her session this evening. Karen, just give us a little bit more detail about your innovation journey. I was resisting the temptation to ask you if you've always wanted to be an innovation expert, even when you were a little girl.
Well, maybe just didn't know it, but I really was an educational psychologist before getting into innovation. And actually, when I worked at Andrews from 2000 2005, before I was in the program, I was becoming more and more aware that some of the ways we helped motivate learners was not very effective. And I was becoming really aware of students who were kind of just taking, this wasn't just at Andrews, this was a lot of higher ed, just signing up for majors just to get a job. And then getting more aware of people who were living for the weekend. And I had a couple incidences with students that they just said, this isn't working. I'm just going to settle for this or go back and help my dad in his road sign shop. That was one student that actually catapulted me to think, there's got to be more to tap into our own natural gifts and human potential. And right around that time, Andreasen asked me to go to a speech up in Chicago that was put on by, it was actually the Willow Creek's Art Creativity Weekend, and DeWitt Jones was speaking. He wanted me to go hear this. DeWitt Jones is a big photographer from National Geographic. He had just done awesome work. And I got there true to form just as it was starting. So every seat was filled. And when I got there, I was just climbing up all these stadiums way in the back. I was sitting all the way in the back with my head resting against the wall. So I was definitely the last one in. And he started to tell all these fantastic stories of living out his passion and his natural creativity and taking pictures and showing the world the beauty of the world. And he said it took a lot of courage, because I would be hunkered in a canoe waiting for the perfect hippopotamus picture, crouching in a tree. But it was worth it because I was living my passion. I was just alive, just really sharing with the world my own natural creativity. And I started thinking, say, wow, you don't hear people talk like that often. Then he asked the group, which was about 10, 20,000 people. He said, how many of you would like to live your innate creativity in your jobs? And everyone he said, stand up. And people just shot up to their feet. And then he said, okay, look around, look at everybody. And then he said, how many are actually doing it? Stay standing. And there was just this sad moment of people just slumping to their feet, to their seats. And it was like a watershed moment for me. I said, this is what I was feeling. And I said, look at all these people, like 10,000 people who are now slumped down their seats, and the energy that was there is just gone. So I rushed down out of the auditorium, called my husband and said, I think I know what I need to do. I really need to study leadership and creativity and how that makes a person really answer the two most important questions we'll ever ask. Who am I and what is my work, my God-given work? And so then I set off on a course, and Eric, Jay, Dwayne, all you guys helped me into the program. And I had a very diverse program because I was able to tap into University of New York, University of Alberta, Stanford, and University of Denmark. And then the classes at Andrews, and we just really put together what wasn't really existing, but it's the study of creativity and how it transforms people and how to bring it into your life. And that just sent me on a course that I never realized I'd be here. But anyway, it was awesome. And I think I know the Lord was leading.
So
And
Karen, this was growing like creative leaders was the title of your dissertation?
yeah.
And that
yes.
was really kind of your big launch into this, right?
Yes, but please don't read my dissertation because it's I loved the process. I loved that the program was awesome. I tell people the program was awesome. Yes, it was the beginning of a deeper.
And you've learned more and
So
more. I mean, you've continued to learn though, right?
Yes, that's why I said if you read my dissertation, it's like
Yeah.
scratching the surface. Anyway, you probably couldn't make much sense out of it anyway. So people say they want to read it. I said, please don't. I think it's the worst thing I've done as far as like, well, when you're so new into it, I guess that's a message for everyone. Don't worry if your dissertation doesn't sound all that intelligent. Anyway, so I'm not going to take myself too seriously on this.
Well,
I
now
just
you guys, I just want to jump in here. Sorry, Karen, but this is experientially the tension between traditional academics,
Yes.
that is
Right.
Yes.
stuffed shirts like myself, and creative people like Karen. It was very difficult for her to fit all of her energy and insights into this straitjacket of a dissertation. It's a very good one, by the way, and you would enjoy reading it.
And I couldn't imagine you doing the dissertation. Like, that's amazing. But where you've gone since then has been, I mean, it's really launched you though, hasn't it?
Yes.
I mean, that's what really got you to Florida and your passion got going. So it was essential to really your launching into this.
I couldn't have done it without it. That's true. Without you guys. And the big thing is, it's really been a very practical approach. And I was so excited to be part of this because I do represent the other side of data and research that is boots on the ground and challenging actually some of the big data that's out there. Not to be disrespectful to anybody.
No, I think that's really a big piece to the picture is because when many people think of innovation, so they're thinking creativity, hard to measure, where's the data, so like, okay, because when somebody said, oh yeah, we should get Karen, I'm like, yeah, but she's in innovation. And then I'm like, no, there could be some real, so do you actually use data in innovation, or is it just occasionally happen, or how?
Well, it's really the melding of art and science. It's like if you study anything about D. Hawk, he's the guy that started the big international Visa credit card. He coined the word chaotic, chaos and order together. And that's what makes really powerful change, lasting change, because if you have too much order, you don't get anything done. If you have too much chaos, you can't get anything done. So it's the chaos randomness of going out and learning, and the chaos of the new, then bringing it back in, sense making with the order. And so by bringing science and art, or chaos and order together, you really get a new kind of learning, and you get some real relevancy that can be missing if you just stay on one side or the other. Too much order or too much chaos. So, but I feel very grateful and honored about the journey I had, that we've had real practical opportunities to see working with challenges and opportunities, and what was the outcome of those things. And people don't realize creativity actually is, it's the reason why people, I think, can't think, or they don't oftentimes think it has
it's artsy. It's artsy.
Yeah, but
innovation is artsy.
but it's always going into someplace new. So you can't have innovation or creative thinking without going someplace new. And when you go someplace new, the past cannot always predict where you're going to be. So you don't have to know everything before you start. And I think that's the difference. Is the rational side, you plan it out and you know where you're going. Maybe you think like COVID hits and then what?
Sure.
But creativity is actually, when you take the data, it's actually waiting for the surprise. Having a goal, working the creative process, but knowing you're going to be surprised and you're going to go places that you haven't expected. And that's part of it.
Okay,
And
so
that's what we.
Karen, let me sorry, Randy.
No, go ahead.
That opening anecdote, Karen, I don't know how many times I've heard that, but it never failed to inspire me. I mean, it's such an amazing narrative, and I just want to, maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, and if so, you can just tell me. Well, let's back up. But I like organizational behavior, and you just mentioned that this is to allow people to be creative, to actually give them that intention, that directive. We want something creative here. Let's be novel. Let's surprise our market, whatever it is. Let's surprise the church. I suppose that's not very difficult, but allowing people to be creative. Is there any data? Are there data studies that have been done that show where if an organization or a team, let's say, the manager is trained in loosening the reins a bit and kind of ignoring the bean counting, for a few months, and let's see, what we can really do around these market needs that we have identified, whatever. Does that increase engagement? Does it increase employee retention? Does it increase employee loyalty? All those kind of, are there some traditional research, outcomes-based research that say this is really powerful?
Well, I do know this. I'll just shoot some data to you really quick. McKinsey, Deloitte, these big guys, they've done, Harvard, they've done some big studies. One of them was on 2,100 executives, and the top desire they had was to be innovative. 98%, we need innovation. We want innovation. About 93% said, yeah, but we don't know how. And so I think that's interesting. So there's a big need there to help people learn how to innovate. Secondly, there's a lot of, from my experience too, I've seen this over and over in healthcare, in pro sports, in government, and universities. We want to be innovative. Let's go be innovative. But oh, wait, not that. No, we can't break from that tradition. We can't do this. And you have to just hang on to your head. If you want something innovative, you have to embrace the fact that you're going to go a place you haven't been before. And forgiveness has to be center, because without movement, you can't go anywhere. And so research shows that the desire to be innovative and creative leaders, high. The know-how is low. Also, the research shows that between 80 and 90% of all organizations that do employ creative process, innovative thinking, and they have models in place, they're more successful. And they have actually, some of those are the ones that did the best during COVID, because they really have embraced the idea of learning. And innovation is really learning. It's learning as you go, iterative learning, rapid prototyping, failing fast, embracing looking at mistakes as just another way of learning. And so the research shows creative organizations, AKA learning organizations, and leaders who give space to the people they hire to actually do their work are more successful, and they're less oftentimes disrupted. Or if they're faster at pivoting when disruptions creeping up on them. So that's just some interesting data.
They're open to that. Okay, so maybe we could jump to kind of a practical question. So when we're talking about innovation in from your perspective, what are we talking about? Like when you say we're going to be more innovative, right? Well, so what do you mean by that? And maybe you could give some illustrations about some different innovations you've been involved in, which would help us kind of.
I have a little video. My son who works with me is off on his honeymoon, so I'm without my tech person. So I have a little video I want to show you, but I'm a little afraid I don't know how to do it. So I'm going to try. I practice this. I'm going to try, but you might have to tell a story, Jay or Randy, while I'm figuring it out. I have it ready, but I have to share my screen, so it's just scary.
Yeah.
I can share my screen, can I?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to try to do this. And this little video, do you see this?
Yeah, we're getting there. That's good.
Oh.
That's good.
Now I have to make sure you can hear it. That's the next thing.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
I'm just going to try it and see if you can hear it. And if you can't, what this is an older video, but it shows some outcomes and it kind of gives an overarch of how innovation started at Advent Health. We aren't using this one because the old name changed, but this was
it gives people
it's
the
a few
idea
years
of what
old, so it's okay,
about.
but it gets the point across. Okay, I'm going to try it now. Here we go.
2 words can change your life.
Can you hear it?
I do. You're fired. It's malignant. There's 2 other words, simple, rather mundane, and very common, that when used together can also change your life and change the world. These 2 words, yes and.
Innovation to me is inspiring because it means you're going somewhere new that no one has been before.
The concept of Phil came when Florida Hospital was looking to really become more intentional about innovation process and cycles.
Dr. Karen Tilstra brought on the leaders of the Florida Hospital organization to begin this innovation lab. Their vision was to have it open to everyone in the hospital.
From the moment you walk in, you can just feel the energy.
We've seen people work together who haven't worked together. We've seen a culture of innovation emerge where we never thought possible.
Phil is embedded in the center of Florida Hospital. It just made sense because all you have to do is step out directly onto these units and you're getting empathy.
A very rapid, self-correcting innovation model that connects with the end user to experience what the end user experiences. So they're moving beyond their habitual ways of thinking and acting.
This is so powerful because solutions are coming from where they need to, from the front lines where the people are actually encountering the problems.
Chief Strategy Officer David Banks said the Innovation Lab would be successful if it fostered a culture of innovation across the healthcare continuum. So far, we've had over 300 doctors, 400 administrators, and 1,200 nurses come together to collaborate and redesign the patient experience.
When Phil began, the focus was on internal projects. As word spread, more and more outside companies began to co-create at Phil.
Over the past 5 years, Phil has run over 500 projects, and each one has had a unique challenge with the potential to revolutionize healthcare.
We were able to reduce our cycle time from 63 days down to 41 days, and we were also able to increase our retention rate from 46% to 75%. We redesigned the pediatric surgery experience, and parents are now reunited with children the moment they come out of surgery.
Adventist Health System brought together 40 people from across the country to fundamentally transform how we transition patients from one care setting to another.
We went from collecting maybe 10% of our uninsured patients to 25.
We eradicated patient falls for 108 days, catapulting us from last place in the hospital to amongst the top 5 units.
Our public policy department was able to increase the readership of our publications by nearly 50%.
We shaved 10 minutes off of our stroke process, which means we saved 20 million neurons a patient.
52% of our patients now are finding their car that were not before.
The Health Village Fitness Center has seen a 40% increase in engagement in just 1 year.
Our communication with nurses on HCAP scores have been above the 75th percentile for 3 months in a row.
We're seeing 37% more patients a day, which enabled us to hire another full-time employee.
K-Tape has found 4 new innovative applications for kinesiotape in medicine.
We've increased pre-op readiness for our inpatient surgical patients from 40% to 80%.
Over 1,200 students are now literate in using design process to solve complex problems.
We went from an average of 37 complaints a month to 0.
We're now seeing 88% of patients in 7 minutes.
And we've never done that in the years, and we've tried many different things.
It's for the patient that we ultimately do a better job at what we're doing. So if you got to ask, what do? You improve patient care and save lives.
The past is no longer predictive, the present is fleeting, and the future is where we need to be.
Well, that did it. That gave us some examples. That's what we're talking about innovation. And then this was kind of a setup for my next question. And that was, where's the data? But this was a whole lot of data, right?
I'm glad it worked.
Exactly.
No, because, and what I wanted to highlight, all this data was rooted from empathetic, what we say, empathy safaris or discovery pre-work. So the difference is, I thought the video might be helpful. We have a few other videos that we could share. That I love making videos. That's probably the more serious one. But so one thing that I wanted to share that, Randy, we did talk about is a lot of work comes from data that is developed from the past. And so it's predictive. It's supposed to be predictive, and you don't know why something happened. You just know that it happened. And what we did, and design thinking is a model we used a lot of. We had 7 other models that we kind of developed, but design thinking was our big model. And it's really saying, before you go and do anything, go and learn what's going on. Don't look at data. Don't do anything. Go and connect with the people who are experiencing the challenge or opportunity and learn from them. Hear their stories, experience what they experience, observe, and don't even interview them in a formal interview. Really hear their stories. And then you start understanding what's really going on. And you can even ask yourself, what else is happening? We developed some really fun ways to get people to identify their assumptions, so they could use those, that awareness when they went out and looked. Every one of those projects and all the projects actually that we did, we really went through an empathetic process. So we went out to co-discover, and then the people would get co-inspired what was happening, and then they could co-create. And then at the end, if they needed to bring in data for prototypes and things like that, they did. But it was a bumpy ride sometimes, because people would say, wait, we know, we've got the data. And then we'd say, wait, before you go out there and make some kind of solution, go and just learn from those experiencing the challenge. Invariably they'd come back, wow, we didn't know this, or what we thought was the problem really wasn't the problem. It was that. So it's empathetic data. And
so do you get, because it seems like, we get into a situation like this, and and you're going to go help someone be more innovative, and those that are maybe in the power or in the know or something kind of have this sense like, we kind of already know what's happening. So, let's just, go through this, but just do it quick so we can get to the solving the real problem. Does that happen to you?
I could write a comedy show, a series, many years of comedy shows. Yes. And here's the thing. Nobody means to do harm. People are trying to do good work. There was no executive that entered the lab in any of the labs I worked with or helped develop that ever said, I'm coming in to do bad work. It's just, remember the 3 myths of the modern world, at least what I've been able to identify. The 3 myths of the modern world say nothing's connected. We have to know everything before we start, and rational thinking is best. So we are subtly trained that without even realizing it. So when you do something that's not really rational, which would be, we're not going to look at the data first, we're going to go meet the people who are experiencing the challenge. It's like, wait a minute, we don't have time for that. We have the data. In fact, we just had a situation at a large healthcare system a couple of weeks ago that they had, they were trying to infuse a new system, or a new, it wasn't a product, it was a service. And some empathy had been gathered, and the empathy said the exact opposite. And the executive said, no, we're looking at the data. We got to go with what the data says. And so finally the nurses came and said, listen, we live this. We know what you're trying to do isn't going to work. We don't care what the data says. And so they were large-minded enough to go down and learn and observe, hear the stories. And they came back and said, wow, we would have really lost a ton of money. And not only that, we probably would have lost some really good employees if we had pushed forward. And that, I think, is the big thing about innovation, is you cannot run innovation like business as usual. It has to operate differently if it's organizational innovation. And what's cool is kids in garages and startups know this. This is something that they know. They clearly know it. We get confused when we get locked into traditions and best practices and ways of doing things. So when you're with innovation, you got to be next practice. You got to be looking for the next practice, not the best practice, because best practice is just going to get you to the top, to what's already been established, which is good. Sometimes that's what you need. But if you're trying to innovate, you have to push past that. And it's not always a welcome journey for everybody. Anyway.
Okay.
But I have
go
to
ahead.
say one thing so I want to say that the flip side of the myth is everything's connected. You don't have to know everything before you start. And rational thinking is good, but you need the blend of rational and creative thinking when you're working with innovation. So I had to clarify that. I had to make sure.
No, that's good. All right. So just so we give some context for folks, for everyone. So we're going to be transitioning within the next 10 to 15 minutes into taking questions. So as questions are coming to your mind, please feel free to drop those into the chat and we will try to get those. Jay Brand has now donned his glasses and he's ready to be honing in on these things. So we want to get to that. So I want to clarify something because I think that we might misunderstand something because I'm hearing what could sound like a conflicting message, Karen, and that is this. Don't trust the data, go to the people, right? I mean,
to start out.
To start, but then, and okay, that's good because, we just saw the video and there was data everywhere, but all of those data were really talking about like the results. They were measuring results of the process. And so
Right.
Data used in the process, not at the beginning, but maybe you're using kind of a different research method. Maybe it's more of a ethnography. You're kind of getting into the experience of other people.
It's human-centered. So good innovation is human-centered. Well, in fact, actually, I'll say something very bold. I believe all of our problems are solvable if we're willing to solve them. And if we're willing to embrace the fact that all of our problems really result back, they're about us, humans. And so we really should, if we want the best outcomes, we should really be human-centered in the way we solve problems. And that, I think, is the key. Data, big data, can be very good. I'm not saying to eradicate it, but it doesn't tell you why. It tells you what happened. I do a lot of work with Chick-fil-A. They did, I was telling you this, Randy, they did an interesting thing during COVID. They went from pretty successful to extremely successful, and they became.
Well, this is what I hear you saying is like this was Chick-fil-A was doing well. COVID hit, and they went through the roof.
Wild, and so they were saying, "Well, what happened? Why are we doing so much better?" And they said the data is showing, we're doing better, but why? So they some of their design thinkers went out and just checked what was going on. Two things happened. They wouldn't have found this from the data, but when they talked to the people in the lines, they said, well, two things. They found out that Chick-fil-A was the first ones to go and put their people out. They hired more people and stuck them out because cars were just lined up, for the drive-through, and they would talk to them. And so that was one thing. And secondly, they found that the perception was that Chick-fil-A was a better fast food restaurant than some of their competitors. And so they didn't really have that idea before. They knew that they were popular, but who outdoes McDonald's? I mean, McDonald's is the biggest. But they said that when restaurants shut down and they had to choose and they didn't want to cook, they learned that people said, oh, we feel Chick-fil-A's healthier and more friendly. They really didn't know that before. And they wouldn't have found it from the data because their data was saying they just got busier. That's just one example. And I'm not saying to throw out data. I'm just saying, just hold off a little. Go talk to people, because that's really where you're going to learn when you start. I'm talking about innovation. If you're just trying to do what some of the best people do in a certain situation or a certain industry, just the data will tell you what was good in the past. But it's not predictive in a rapidly changing world and a very connected world that we have.
Well,
So
Karen,
things
Karen,
change faster. Yeah.
Could we say though that empathy, empathy paths, empathy journeys, empathy safaris, all those wonderful terms that you have, that's a type of data, right? I mean, maybe we've applied just too narrow a definition of data, what constitutes data. Maybe.
Yes, I'm glad you said that.
You're certainly collecting, broad, a rich bandwidth of information around the user experience or whatever.
Right. It's messier data because you got to get out. You got to get out and connect, and that's what really changes. I mean, Stanford has all kinds of studies on this. The little story that I think I shared with you and Randy a little while ago. J&J, Johnson & Johnson's a really high caliber organization, and they really pride themselves in quality healthcare devices. And so they had really had market share, but there was a point where they're minimally invasive, they call Crotars, or that whole series of devices was losing market share. And so the head guy, he just assumed, for reasons, because the data seemed to show it was the sales rep. So he called down to the lab and said, I need to bring my team in. We need to innovate a way how to get a business model without sales reps. We're just tired of these sales reps. They just are sinking us. And so I said, well, come on down, but would you just hold off on your solution, and we will get you in surgery rooms. We'll get you talking with doctors. We'll get you observing. We'll get you taking you through the process of what they experience using your equipment, and then you can see if that's what you want to do with your sales reps. He said, okay, all right. And this gets to your point, Randy. He said, okay, Karen, I like you, so I'll humor you. I said, okay, thanks. Anyway, they came down. We had them in surgeries, 4 surgeries. They were all direct up, and the surgery teams knew there was observers in there, but they didn't know who. They were using their devices. And right from the start, the team was like, these devices are so hard to use. You think you know, and then you get going, and the bottom the bases had to have the right attachment. And if you had base 1 and base 2 and you got them mixed up that looked very similar, they looked identical, it didn't work. And so one guy said, this company is such a ripoff. They just do this so we'll open more of their devices, so we have to buy more because we have to throw them away once they're open. And then one doctor said, boy, if it wasn't for those sales reps, we wouldn't know anything about this. And so they heard for like 6 hours, they heard so much raw feedback. And the head guy was appalled because, he said, wow. So they came back to the lab, and they came back very somber, and they said, this is just hard to take, that first off, they think we're a ripoff, and that our equipment has been so hard to use because it wasn't hard for us to use. We said, yeah, of course, it's not hard for you to use since you designed it. Anyway, the long and the short of it is they were able to take that and then redesign. They prototyped some stuff, went back to their labs, and then they came back down and tried it again, and it was awesome. But the main guy said, Karen, if I'd have gone with my first idea, I'd have fired my sales reps. I can't even imagine the impact and the damage I would have done to so many people's lives. That's just one example. We had smaller examples of people coming in thinking they knew what the solution was.
Right.
But when they go out and experience what the end user experiences, you get just a way different view. And you might not know the answer, but you've been able to identify the real need. And that's what data is for anyway. So you're right, Jay, it is data, it's just human-centered, and it's putting the designer right in the heart of the problem, not as an observer.
And I think, this story, this kind of idea that Jay was talking about is really this idea where, when you get, when he got that, he didn't get just, sterile data. He experienced it.
Yeah.
And so that went into his emotions rather than looking at some big data. Now all of a sudden is just, but like, whoa, that was like huge, because it was the story, it was the experience, and data came through much more personally than maybe another way.
Well, and there were so many stories in all the different industries I've helped. It's always the same thing, is people want to do good work. They mean to do good work, but we we somehow we resist going and really diving in to discover what's really, to co-discover. Because once we co-discover, like you said, it was the emotion, he was co-inspired. The whole group was co-inspired. And what they created was really kind of a inspiration from a children's clothing company that matched clothes for little kids, could easily match clothes.
Right.
And but also I've learned everyone's in the same boat. It doesn't matter. I've had the president of GE, that big dude, sitting in my office, in the lab, not my office, in the lab, saying, Karen, I can't believe what we don't know. And the fact we learned how to do empathy, we're transformed. He actually said, I love you. I took that for what it meant. But no, I said, this guy is a multi-millionaire, and he still needed to sit in a scrappy little innovation lab and say, oh, we need to learn from the people who use our things or who experience the problems we're trying to solve. Yeah, it's so amazing. I love it though. We're all in the same boat. No one really knows anything. And I say that respectfully, but when it comes to innovation, we don't. That's why we have to experience it to learn and discover and be surprised.
Well, we actually do have several questions coming in, and some of them, I think some of them.
That's good. Well, thank you, Karen. This has been very good, very helpful. We're teasing this out a lot better than I've had before. This is helpful.
I am expecting questions, and I might not be able to answer them, but I am kind of random or kind of radical.
From your perspective, Karen. All right.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Well, no, these. I mean, these are excellent questions because they're actually sort of queuing me up for some things that I wanted to explore with you anyway. So I mean, they're fantastic. The first one is, what is the biggest challenge that you face when attempting to establish a culture of innovation in an organization where it has not been practiced? So you have this traditional organization, we know what we do and we do it well, and you're trying to introduce innovation, and that's fluffy stuff, it's not relevant here. How do you, so first of all, what is a culture of innovation? What is the importance of the cultural context for innovation? And then how do you go about changing staid traditional organizations?
Well, first off, the value and the critical part of a culture of innovation for an organization is that's how they stay relevant. A culture of innovation really means that people with it, you have tapped into the collective intelligence, the creative capacity, and leadership potential of everyone within the organization, even the most marginalized. And leaders oftentimes don't like me to say that last part, but every organization has marginalized, voiceless, faceless people. And so I would say answer it like this. The biggest challenge is fear of leaders, and they don't even mean to have that fear. And that coupled with the fact that the closer you get to the top, the farther you are from the truth. And so I say that respectfully. And so the kind of innovation that I really wanted to create was that would bridge frontline knowledge with top leader power, and the way to access the whole organization. And we developed this model called the Orchard Model of Innovation that I think does that fairly well. The biggest challenge is, I think, for people to embrace the journey of innovation, but it's who we really are. We're all innovative. Everyone's creative with leadership potential. And if we could embrace that and say, we don't have to know everything. We could fail sometimes, but if we do it right, we fail really rapidly and cheap. We don't have these huge multi-million-dollar failures. That the biggest challenge is ourselves, fear, I think. That's from my perspective. And data, a lot of leaders rely heavily on big data because it shows what happened in the past. But again, it's not going to take you to the future. Not today anyway. Maybe it used to, but not today. I mean, look at the companies that have been disrupted. Every institution's failing right now, and I say that respectfully, but we're going to have to innovate. Anyway, that's my short answer. Fear.
So it's a survival imperative, really.
Yeah. Well, the first law of human nature is survival, and so we go into fear to survive. So, yeah.
Okay, Well, yeah, that's fantastic. I think that's, you know, that's a pretty broad issue, cultural issues now to change.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was some fantastic insights to get us started. So, but here's another question. This is kind of a clarification question. I'm sure it's occurring to a lot of folks because, you know, we have a lot of you know, leaders, corporate executives. I mean, other kinds of folks here who've been very successful, and there's lots of tools out there.
Right.
You know, Six Sigma and you know, total quality, you know, control circle. I mean, all kinds of stuff. And how is design thinking different from quality improvement initiatives or processes? So what makes design thinking unique in this toolkit of business tools and so forth? I mean, is it?
Right. That's a good question. And I have had the opportunity and the privilege, I would say, I guess, there is a large healthcare system coming out of Chicago and going into mid-America that called me and asked me to help them learn design thinking. And then we were going to meld design thinking with Six Sigma, which I thought, wow, that's awesome. And since then, RJ Reynolds, the cigarette company, which I thought was the aluminum foil company, they asked me to work with them. So I was working with them, and I said, oh, you guys aren't aluminum foil. Anyway, it doesn't matter. What they told me, so this isn't me, this is what they said. They said, we loved going through this because we realized and that this is just them. I don't know about all Six Sigma people and lean startup and all that, but it helped us to unpack our focus on getting through, because it was really the deep empathy dive at the beginning. And that's really, design thinking is 80% empathy, and then 20% defining what the real problem is, rapidly idea generation, rapidly prototyping and testing the last 20%. And so what I learned from them, and it was a big group, they said, we just didn't understand how to do the pre-empathy and the empathy work. And the pre-empathy work is bringing yourself, I like to say, bringing yourself to the innovation table. So you have good manners when you're working with innovation and other innovation people, so they can eat with you. That is identifying your assumptions and suspending judgment, a yes and mindset, really adapting a forgiveness mindset when things don't go how you think. And that's what I learned from them. And that was really helpful. I thought that's because I've had that question too. And I know in a lot of organizations, when the Six Sigma, like I'll speak for the organizations that I've worked with that have a lot of Six Sigma, they felt that the design thinking approach, or melding design thinking with Six Sigma, was a more redemptive, because a lot of times Six Sigma is about reducing and becoming more efficient, and design thinking is effectiveness. How can we ultimately get more effective, which we will become then more efficient? So I think it's a fine line. I mean, I know that there's times Six Sigma is really, really helpful, especially if you have a lot of machines you're working with and things like that. Mm-hmm. That's just what I learned from them, that they said it was the human-centered approach that really made a difference. Now, I do know that Six Sigma has kind of modified through the years. So I'm not an expert on Six Sigma, but that's just what the experience I've had.
Mm-hmm. No, that was fantastic. I thought
one question, Karen, we had talked about something, and one of the things we had talked about was you had mentioned this metaphor of water, ice, steam, or something. So because that was really interesting, especially talking about data. So maybe you could share that as well, because I think that was a good contribution.
Okay. So first off, measuring innovation in a regular corporate, America is not the same. I don't care what anyone says. From my experience, hundreds of projects working with all different industries, you just have to do it differently. So it was a real challenge for us. For a lot of time, we thought, wow, we don't even know what we're measuring. And do the measurements matter? Because things are always changing. And so over the course of time, this is something we struggled with. So we came up with this model, ice, water, steam. And it kind of came out of urgency, because back in innovation, it's a big organization, asked me to speak about how we were doing data and collecting. I said, oh yeah, well, that's a big bugaboo for us. Anyway, so I sat the team down, I said, guys, we have done so many projects. We have to get language. We have to face this. And so we came up with the concept of ice, water, steam. Ice was, some of our projects were just absolutely, there was no question. They came in, they did a project, they left, they created something new, and they became 100% better or 80% better. Retention was better.
And they had the data to show it.
Right. The data was so
Yeah,
easy.
yeah, okay,
And
good.
those were great things to talk about.
Yeah, yeah.
Water was like the big blood draw project that started out. In fact, this is actually what brought it on. I was talking to a group of leaders telling them we'd done this blood draw project, and that it really connected phlebotomy and emergency room nurses. And afterwards, the chief nursing officer said, Karen, you don't realize it did that, but also it opened up phlebotomy time. Now they're actually, they're able to do other things, and nurses now are using graduate nurses. That she said there's like 12 things that came out of that project, but we didn't know it until 18 months had passed. So we said, oh, that's like a river, water. We start with this outcome, and as it goes forward, there's this, and this. So we said, oh, okay, that's helpful. Then we said there's our STEAM projects that we don't really know what happened, but everyone just got better and everyone's happier, and no one can really say this. And so we said, this is just crazy. So when I got to back in, I said, okay, you guys, I drug half my team with me, because I said, I'm not going to stand on that stage alone, because we're going to get laughed off the stage when we say STEAM. Okay, so we just said, all right, we're doing it, guys. We're just telling them our experience. They can't argue with our experience. That was our data. And so after we shared and went off stage, people came up to us, several people, not one or two, it was like 12. They said, thank you. We've had that same experience. You know, we have the ice, we have the water, and the steam. And some of the STEAM projects are these cultural changes that we can't really say, we don't know what happened, but all of a sudden we're just better. And so the head guy from back end told me, he said, Karen, we love that, because you're just blowing our minds, but it's true. We don't want to admit the fact that sometimes we don't know why things got better. I said, okay, phew, that was a relief. But I wanted to be a good representative to Andrews University and not speaking blasphemy from the stage, data blasphemy. Anyway, since then, I've seen it. It just, we get too narrow on our focus of what data is. Anyway, that's our ice, water, steam model. I have a little graphic. I don't want to bring it up because I don't think I need Andy here to bring up the tech part. But anyway, you got the picture. Ice, water, steam.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Listen, one more question. This is, I think, I mean, I'm misinterpreting this one, but I think it's kind of a practical way to continue exploring this cultural shift that's often required to truly, open the door to innovation. But it says companies share data in spreadsheets and PowerPoints, especially DOP, data of the past. And how do you help companies share empathetic based data, so people actually feel this salience, this human based relevance? So sure. I guess it's kind of it's more of a detailed version of painting a traditional culture. And then I hate to say how do you sell, because but how do you convince people that this empathy is going to provide something that is really, really relevant, and everyone's going to experience it and feel it? And
I actually don't have and I say this again respectfully, I don't have a burden to convince them. I just say, let people tell the story. And that's what we did. So we made that little video, but normally we've had the teams tell their story in 4 minutes. We developed this 4-minute report out story, innovation story, 4 minutes. You have 4 minutes to tell the story. Story is what convinces people. And also the proof was in the pudding. Now, of course, I'm making it sound so fantastic. There were projects we did that we struggled with, and there were leaders that said, I'm not doing this. But for the most part, if they cooperated and they took the step into a design thinking, human-centered kind of design, they were really transformed by it. But it's story to me. I'm all about the story, honestly.
Well, and it sounds like that's really kind of the same thing that is what you're doing in empathy. Like, you're going for the story. And so when you do your report out, you just kind of go right back to the story where it is. So a couple of quick questions based on some of the comments that I'm hearing, and then we're going to maybe try to transition to some like closing comments, because I want to ask you to kind of give not necessarily a summary of what we talked about, but if someone wants to go and be more innovative, either in themselves or others. So, but I want to get, I'll come back to that. So,
Okay.
Inside of being innovative. And so I think to myself, someone going into one of these empathy experiences, it seems like there's a couple of factors that would be really influential to that experience. Number one, what kind of, factors of their psyche are really important. You talked about this pre-empathy, kind of a preparation. Does cultural intelligence, do you think, play any role? Does intelligence, like the more traditional, does that play a role? Humility, maybe. What are some of the pieces that really help to prepare one to really be in that experience?
Well, Jesus said it, unless we become like little children, we won't enter the kingdom of heaven. And I think the kingdom of heaven is the ultimate creative experience. Just curiosity. We just take ourselves too seriously. We don't have to take ourselves too seriously. We take the work seriously, but we don't have to take ourselves too seriously. And I think that's it. Go with the question. What I like to say, the mother of all questions, what's really going on here? And we're trying to find out things. We ask a question like that, what's really going on? And if we really stick to that question, we have curiosity. And as long as we stay curious, we are going to be seeking answers. It's when we stop being curious that we get in, and that we hunger for algorithms. Algorithms have their place, but when you're trying to innovate, algorithms are not that helpful. Because I mean, it's, that's just my own thought. But so I've been out here with my 2 grandchildren for this last week. They're so curious. It's so cute. It's just, we had a tea party yesterday. It just, nothing went as planned, but the curiosity and how it was just very, very sweet. I mean, I could give you all kinds of illustrations. You have your own experiences with children, all of you, I'm sure. And you just can learn so much the way children are. In fact, there's that study that I know you know about this, that kindergarten to 12th grade, and they asked kindergartners how creative, everyone raised their hand. 4th grade, how creative half the class, and then 12th grade, one person raises their hand. So we forget that we are creative. And actually, we oftentimes do creative things that we don't even recognize. Like, oh, that was nothing, but it actually was something. And I think that's how we just stay curious and stay grateful for what we have, and that we have the opportunity to learn. And I love the concept of let's go co-discover till we get co-inspired, and then we can create. And you can always bring data in later, but I like to say, hold off on the big data until you go and get the story, the human story of what's really happening. And I've just seen firsthand over hundreds of projects and working with thousands of people, it has never failed. And it's been full of surprises, and a lot of people come back in tears, and it's like, we had no idea. And we all want to get better. So, I mean, I also think design thinking is really very much how salvation operates and how Jesus's love operates, which I find so inspiring. And one thing that we tried to really, and I will say, drill into people's heads that who I've worked with, is the mantra that really comes from Margaret Wheatley: people care about what they help create, and they're responsible when they care. And so if we give people a chance, and we don't keep all the big decisions and work at the top, and give people a chance to go and find answers, they become responsible to bring those answers to life and make them work. And so you don't have to have the big mandates, but it's so foreign to how most organizations work. But if you can't work that way, you get really good results, and you hear people really exclaiming, wow, we feel so innovative. We feel so involved. One thing about data, we had the Advent Health Lab open for about 2 years, and they had been able to determine there had been like about a 24% raise in employee engagement. And I don't think it was all the lab, but I think the lab had a big part because people were really given opportunities. Now that just this recently that lab changed because the leadership at Advent Health changed. So there's a little different going on there now, but that's always the journey. So I think we just stay curious and remember we're human and have gratitude that we can learn. Anyway, that's my speech.
Well, listen, I just before we jump to the closing wisdom, I think you already gave us a wonderful summary there. But this is kind of I need to insert this question because it's almost the pink elephant in the room, if you will, given our situation here with this meeting and talking with Karen and how she renovated our program and department when she was there and so forth. But what are some ways that a culture of innovation may apply to our educational environment?
Well, I think, again, I always like to say the question of what's really going on here. What is really happening in this case in the world, and what's going on? And once you can identify the real needs by really answering the question, what's going on and what else, you start saying, oh, maybe this no longer is so relevant. Maybe this over here is. And I think it's just asking questions, lots of questions. I say, I would always say, ask, if you have to say 100 things, make 99 of those questions and one answer.
I love that. There's a Randy was talking about some of the characteristics, the character traits and so forth, that seems to be that's a humble position, humble position to begin with the admission of naivete. Not only do you not know what the solution is, you really don't know what the right question is.
Right.
Yeah. And so to start with curiosity and to be very open-ended about the front end of this exploration, I think that's marvelous, and it contributes to learning. I mean, that's what all learning is about. After all, you don't if you're doing things that or do well, or whatever, then you're not learning. So there's an implied ignorance that's required to begin learning. So yeah.
Well, and that seems like it challenges really like the leader. I mean, you're a leader because like you've known what decisions to make, you get it figured out, you have this big picture. And so leaders got it figured out. So why would they need to go to people that they hired? Like, obviously. And so but that's a different mental space that people are going to have to. So really that's kind of, I think that's the creativity, that's the curiosity of and bringing this into leadership. So if you had, I'm thinking about someone who, has a department or, a group of people. And so how do they begin that process? What's the lever? Where do you just start with yourself being more this way? Or do you kind of try to help other people be this, like where does that?
Well, I have I guess you might say the advantage of when they call me, we can work in groups. We can call a group. So it's not like, hey, everyone, just figure it out yourself. That's why I love to have things in projects. So right now I'm working with some counties in Florida, helping them create a whole innovation throughout their whole county. And it's everything we do. We have some education, some training. I hate to say training, some education experiences, but also everything's rooted in projects. So and teaching through projects, because then it's actually relevant to the person, because it's like the vaccines, it was such a great opportunity for projects and all the different challenges with the vaccines. And people are motivated because they are actually working on making their own work better and their solutions of their people that they're working for or with. And then as they learn, especially if you take them through a design thinking model, which is very easy, very self-correcting, very just very easy to put a project with, they start getting language that does evoke innovation. They start getting language that evokes collaboration and forgiveness and moving forward and rapid prototyping and embracing feedback and seeking feedback. they start to realize we're nothing without feedback. And so ways to go out and really get feedback on a prototype, a very rapid, rough prototype we created. People start learning and they experience it. That's why I love the practical side. Everything I do basically they have to have a project. I don't really like simulation because they can always say, well, that was a simulation. But if they bring their own project in, it's just really energizing for people. And I just get very, very inspired by what people can do when given the opportunities. And
do you have quick projects? I mean, because how long does a project last? I mean, because multiple weeks or a 3-day experience? Like, do you have like a 1-hour project or?
We have your one-stop shop. You can have an hour project, an afternoon. It just depends. Now, I just did a thing for Advent Health that was 5 sessions, and the ultimate goal was to see how to create a culture of innovation for this department. And we did a project, and it involved 32 doctors, and we did 5 sessions, and we did it all virtually. So I was excited.
Oh.
Well, we did one face-to-face, but there was, at the end, they said, we did it. We actually went and discovered, and we learned new things, and we were able to define the problems, what we saw. And then they told the leaders. So the top leaders were just like, wow, how'd you guys learn this? And it's not me, it's just getting people involved in innovation where they can actually setting them on a pathway. So I believe that innovation or creative process or creative thinking, you have to.
All right, Karen, let me just wrap this up into like your closing statement, transition into like the one thing you want to leave people with that you don't want them, like if they're going to learn one thing, what would it be, right?
Adapt a yes and mindset. Because with yes and means you don't have to agree with everything. Just stay in the conversation and suspend judgment long enough to learn. That's what I would say. Adapt a yes and mindset. Don't take yourself too seriously, and stay curious. That's what I would say.
That would do it. Wow. That's beautiful. Karen, I really appreciate it. This has been a great blessing, and I don't know. We'll have to do more.
I'd love it.
It's delicious.
You just have to. No, I could get talking. No, I love it. It's fun meeting all of you, seeing your pictures along here. But yeah, just let me know. I love to share what we're doing, and we're always learning too. I'm always learning. I do not stand as an expert. I am always learning. I know what worked here or there, but we're always learning, trying new things. But anyway. Great. So stay curious, like the most interesting man, that commercial.
Yeah, so we all feel like anything is possible now. She's amazing.
I know it sounds sappy. It sounds sappy, but it is. It's true. I mean, you can do many, many more things than you think possible. So
that just gets our minds going, Karen, as usual. Yeah, very well put, Jay. Thank you. Well, I'll turn this back over. I'm not sure, Eric Baumgartner or maybe Dr. Board. This was great. I really appreciate this. Karen, thanks for coming. Jay, thanks for joining us. This is delicious.
Well, I hope it was helpful. God bless, Godspeed, and hope to see you guys. I should be up there sometime in July or August. So let's get lunch. You leaders at the.
That would be fun.
I love it. Yeah.
Yes.
Wonderful. I look forward to it.
Oh yeah, I love it. Bye, dear beloved. Love you guys. Bye.
Thank you. That was really great. And maybe we should give a round of applause.
Yes.
That was really stimulating and inspiring. And that was a great way to start this series, so important series that we have. And thank you so much, Dr. Karen Tilstra, for your presentation. And thank you also, Dr. Brand and Dr. Siebel, for facilitating this great conversation. But at this point, we need to communicate with our audience to tell them what will happen next week. First of all, there was a difference in time Dr. Baumgartner, tell us a little bit what will happen next week. And
okay, okay. Jamie Dom will be with us. And when we had our first conversation with her, she just blew us away because she's an expert in big data. So in one sense, it's a bit the opposite of what we were talking about today. But she's a very practical person. She wrote a book on digital discipling and evangelism.
Mm-hmm.
And when the book came out, everybody ignored her. And guess what? What happened last year? When COVID-19 hit, suddenly all she was saying was like prophetic. And so now everybody wants to talk to her. So we thought we'd bring her in because she is also a person that has a mindset of listening. And she uses that mindset of listening to help pastors, ministry leaders, and others to rethink even the titles of their sermons. So for instance, stand up and listen, you know, or whatever pastors come up with these creative titles, and you scratch your head. That's why I don't have any more hair, because I've pulled out so much of my hair, what I really mean. But she helped her husband, who is a pastor, to just take the content of his sermons and put it into a title, into a question that people are actually asking. They went from having a few hits on their Facebook page to having literally thousands. As a matter of fact, she has now a business and they have a nonprofit organization, and they are profitable simply because they have learned how to listen and how to turn what is right in front of their eyes into data that they can use to change. So it dovetails with what we have heard today, to stay humble, to ask the right questions.
Absolutely. In fact, you know, this was interesting, Karen. What she does is she uses empathy, but her empathy comes from internet data. And so what people are, for example, rather than sitting and watching people hit the computer, she will look at what are search terms for those, and then she will package things in the way that people are searching for them. In other words, it's really, it's this empathy principle, but applied to a new area. And it's true. We had a conversation with her and we came out just like, oh, wow, there's so much we don't know. But it was delicious stuff, Karen. Like, you'll need to join us too. You'll love this. This is.
No, I'd like to. That would be, I could learn about big
Oh
data.
man, it was beautiful.
But the thing that you need to know is that she's the mother of a small child, and so she asked us if we would move it to 8 o'clock so that she could be with her daughter when she goes to sleep, and then she will be with us. So please, the next time you have to be here at 8 o'clock, not at 7 o'clock. We won't be here at 7 o'clock, but it's only next time. Then the next week, we have another prominent couple of guests. We'll tell you next week about it.
Very good, thank you. Now, we would like you to tell us about the class that will start this Monday on the same theme. And we know that those who would be interested to register, there was still a few seats available. They could always send an email to leader@andrews.edu and we could tell them more. But tell us about the class that will start Monday.
Yeah, Jay, why don't you share a little bit about this?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Well, you know, first of all, Randy and I are sort of facilitating this class. So right off, you know, I feel confident because everything that I get wrong and don't know, you know, Randy is great at everything. So he can come in and scoop up you know, what I drop and then put it all together very nicely. So we work together well, you know. But yeah, I'm excited about the class. It's research for decision makers. Randy and I have had several sort of conversations about how our own experience has motivated us to create this class, because Randy can, you know, speak for himself and I'll be very brief, believe it or not. But I was an academician at La Sierra University and Loma Linda University and a few other places, you know, but then my wife wanted to move back to Michigan. And so I went into corporate life for 16 plus years. And at that transition from what I thought, a 50-page academic paper, accepted into a peer-reviewed journal, that was the definition of success. And that was also the definition that I knew what I was doing, and I found the right answer, and I understood the world and all this stuff. That was right. That was the way I sort of a nice little neat package. I'm published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal. And I suddenly was confronted with a situation where, as my VP told me, when I was trying to convince her that I deserved a raise, Jay, those articles are irrelevant to me. I mean, that's exactly what she said. And I learned that actually what she was saying was something meaningful, that I needed to fill in the dots I needed to make it actionable. I needed to make it practical. And so I was 15, 16 years facing this challenge of communicating about research, conducting research that was useful, that was practical, that you could communicate very quickly. Those of you who are C-suite executives, I had this little rule of thumb that somebody told me, and I think it's useful, and I think it is quite accurate. And that is, if you hand anything to a senior executive that's more than half a page, he or she will not read it. So that was, so right there, my 50-page peer-reviewed scientific journal article, never going to get read. So how do I learn how to bridge that gap? So, and Randy has a lot of similar kinds of experiences where we just feel like we have some relevant things to share. We're going to emphasize stories like Karen taught us to do this evening. And also each of you who are in the course, you have your own stories, and I really think it's going to be a dynamic learning environment. I look forward to the experience with you. Randy, you want to add anything? Or
no, we're good. We're out of time. This has been a blessing, and I'm looking forward. Yeah, it was a great thought, Jay, to try to talk quickly, but we're looking forward. So if you have interest in the class, others, we're excited to have a few more join us. That sounds good. Thanks for coming this evening, and we're really looking forward to next week. Just a reminder again, next week at 8 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time rather than 7. We'll actually be on a little bit early, so feel free to jump in and join us with that too.
Dr. Kovic, are you with us? All right, we are going to ask Dr. Kovic to offer the closing prayer for us as we close for this evening. Thank you again all for your participation. This would not be possible without you. God bless you all.
Thank you, Lord, for giving us all creativity. Thank you for Karen Tilstra. She always energizes us. Keep using her, bless her immensely, give her energy, give her health, and give her more and more territory for giving her empathetic story. We thank you. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you very much, everybody.